Golf Card Collector is going to round out the show with his questions. Thoughts on Scotty world number 1 winning back-to-back Players Championships, and he still doesn't have cards. Ridiculous that he doesn't have cards. Ridiculous Golf Card Collector. Ridiculous fondling cardboard. Step it up, Upper Deck. Where are the Scotty cards? Where are the Scotty cards? Golf Card Collector.
What is up? Welcome back to Fondling Cardboard. I'm your host, Mike Lakusta, aka the Golf Card Collector. Wow, it's been an awesome couple of weeks in terms of the Fondling Cardboard podcast. We had Brett McGrath on the pod 2 weeks in a row talking about motivation behind content creation in the sports card hobby, the concept of no recent comps, and talking a bit about SGC and their acquisition by collectors. But it was really last week's episode with Brett that got me really fired up, where we talked about Panini Prism. And Brett laid out the legacy and lineage of Prism and its significance for niche sports like golf, and in his case, wrestling. Today, we're going to be diving into Panini Prism again, except this time in a whole new way. Thanks to Paul Hickey for that intro clip that I played at the beginning of this episode, which came from the Q&A portion of the Sports Card Strategy Show a few short weeks ago. I don't talk much about investing and flipping, but if you're into that sort of thing, check out Paul Hickey's network because that's all Paul does, 24/7. It's literally his identity. A few weeks ago on Paul's show, he sat down with Jason Howarth, a senior vice president from Panini, to talk about the upcoming LIV Golf cards. And while he was preparing for that interview, he sent me a note asking if there's any questions that the golf card community want to hear. And of course, I gave him a list so long that he couldn't possibly ask Jason every question, but he certainly did a great job, and we're going to be sharing that interview on today's episode. But before I get into that, the Masters is almost upon us. Next week, we're going to be talking about the Masters, favorites, dark horses, who has cards, who doesn't have cards, the frustration that comes along with that. And I will be announcing my golf card pool. For years, I run a friendly pool with friends, family, and coworkers. And I've always been complimented that it's very unique, it's very fun. It's not your average office pool that your coworker Joe runs on his lunch break. And I decided, heck, let's run a pool with the community that will involve prizes in the shape and form of golf cards. So hit me up in the DMs if you're interested, and more details to come next week. Speaking of a guy who has always performed well at the Masters, I made a trade recently, an old school 1-for-1 trading card trade. And man, that gets me feeling excited for the hobby. That's what it's all about. It makes me feel like a kid again. And it was for a Corey Connors card. It's not worth much money, but I'll be stoked to have my very first 2024 golf card, and it's a Canadian for my Canadian golf card PC. A couple months ago, I had a Corey Connors card as the card of the week, and I bought 2 copies of that. It was his game dated moment card, one base and one silver version, because I was desperate to have Corey Connors cards. And it wasn't announced yet that he would be in the 2024 Upper Deck Golf sets. Now he has a ton of options in 2024, and I probably overspent by like 20x of what those game dated moments cards are worth now, unless somehow, because they're the first ever printed card of Corey Connors. Yeah, anyways, I'm sure I can get them for a fraction of the price now. And I still don't have them in my hands, since I got them on ComC, and that shipment of mine is still pending because I had a bunch of purchases that they have to compile. I'm not sure. I think I'll still love those cards, and I'm actually thinking about sending them TTM for autographs through the mail. And that way, they'd be a little extra special if they manage to get their way to Corey Connors and he autographed them for me. But the lesson from my experience is be patient. Don't let your impulses take over, and I hope you can learn from my lessons. That Corey Connors card that I traded for is the first card that I've picked up in 2024 that was released anytime recently. It seems that most of the purchases I'm making are older cards that have kind of reached their plateau or their trough of their pricing. And I'm trying to be a bit more smart with my money and not letting the mainstream drag me into the hype and spend my money on the newest and shiniest thing. I'm trying to focus in more on my projects that I've already defined and that I'm dedicated to. In the last few months, I've done several episodes on this theme of projects, and it's something I'll continue to weave in and out of over the next coming months when we're not talking about exciting things like Masters and having conversations with interesting collectors. And speaking of interesting conversations with collectors, let's jump into that interview. Again, it is Paul Hickey from No Off Season and host of the Sports Card Strategy Show, and his guest is Jason Howarth, Senior Vice President of Marketing and Athlete Retention at Panini. Here we go.
Panini has been busy, and you've been one of the busiest men in the hobby lining up these big announcements lately. So today we're going to talk about LIV Golf and Caitlin Clark, two of the biggest Panini signings of late. So let's talk about LIV Golf first, Jason. Just give us kind of an intro real quick into the deal with LIV Golf before I launch into my questions here.
Sure. So, I mean, I think, we've looked at getting into the golf space over the last number of years and always tried to figure out, like, how do you go about doing it? And the challenge was always that, it was very individualized. Your success in building a golf product was going to be based on the strength of the golfers that were in the, in the product. And there was no one entity that kind of had, oversight over them, for lack of a better definition. When we started to dig in deep on LIV Golf, the idea that they had a team format, and the ability to award an individual winner after every tournament, and there are 14 tournaments around the globe. That idea felt like that was something that was compelling that we could build around. Obviously, as you know, in the world of case breaking, having a team format is always, beneficial. So it changed and created a different dynamic, we think, in the golf category as we looked at them.
I think one of the main reasons people can't get into flipping golf cards is because the lack of consistency in sets being released by manufacturers. So is Panini planning to release sets each year, like with new rookie cards, RC shields, things like that?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. Any idea on the length of the partnership? Is there an ongoing licensing deal, or have you announced a particular amount of years that this will go on?
We've just shared that it's a multi-year agreement.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, I know our audience is really excited to know things like, are there any more sets that you're planning on making other than, I know you've announced Instant, Prism, and Impeccable. Are there going to be on-card autos, sticker autos, any other new sets in the works, things like that? I know people like to jump the gun a little bit, Jason, on what the future plans are versus what you've already announced. Anything you can share with us along those lines?
Yeah, I think we're going to try to build, those brands like Prism and Impeccable the way we've built those brands in other sports. And so, obviously Prism felt like the perfect brand to launch with LIV. For a number of reasons. I think one of the things that, when we talked about, those early conversations about LIV, one of the things that I felt really, what we felt really comfortable with was, the vibe and the energy that happens around their tournaments is unique to golf, but it also felt very Prism-like to me. So it was like, this is the perfect alignment. This is the perfect product. And our team was super excited. We went down to their team week and shot content with all the golfers, and interacted with all the golfers, and the level of excitement with the golfers about, getting their trading cards and people that are already vested in the category. It's funny. Little did I know when we started this process with LIV Golf, but this past year at the Sports Collectors Convention, Bubba Watson was hanging out in our booth at the National Sports Collectors Convention for like 2 hours with his kid, and like people are walking by like not realizing that it's Bubba, but I'm like, Bubba is in our booth like for 2 hours, just opening up product and enjoying it with his kid. So, you've got guys like Bubba Watson and Ian Poulter who are, collectors, that are very passionate about it, very passionate about, the brands that Panini has. And so, to have athletes that are engaged at that level and can help educate the other golfers to what that means, I think is super compelling.
So we have a portion of our audience that is big time into golf cards. I want to give them a shout out real quick. The Golf Card Collector on Instagram and Fondling Cardboard is their podcast. And there's even a Facebook group for golf card collectors, the Golf Cards and Memorabilia Facebook group. So they're wondering things like, will this deal with LIV Golf include every single player in LIV Golf, even guys like Anthony Kim, who debuted this season?
Yes.
Short answer, yes. Love it. They're gonna love it. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, we were super excited. We had heard some rumors about Anthony making his return to the golf world beforehand, and obviously, bringing him back into the category is, and just golf in general. He hasn't played in over 12 years at this point, at least professionally or competitively. Bringing him into he had his first tournament last week, with LIV, and I forget where they are now. I think forget where they are now, but they're Hong Kong. They're in Hong Kong, I think. So we're playing in that tournament. So we're excited. Again, it's unique because the other element, like we talked about, this team format, right? And you have the ability to bring in other guys is like these wild cards, right? Is how they refer to players that are not affiliated with a team at this stage. So that's a unique element. Also kind of fun, and will be interesting to see how that all plays out in the space. But I think there's I think they typically have like 2 or 3 wild card players that are not affiliated with teams. So makes it unique for sure.
It's definitely going to be super fun to see what these cards look like. I'm excited. And one element that I know our audience is always into is like, how do you determine who gets the rookie card designation when you're creating a new release like this, where technically, guys you mentioned earlier, Bubba and Ian Poulter, they're not rookies, but are they, how are you going to determine who gets a rookie card designation in these first sets with Panini?
Yeah, I think that's a product development answer, and they'll get super intense and into the weeds on what that looks like and how we're going to represent that. But there's that rookie designation, then there's that like first card opportunity too for some of these players, or I think about when we brought Charles Barkley back into the mix, right? Like, who hadn't been in the category for 20 years, or Tim Duncan this year, bringing him back into basketball after, a hiatus of like 15 years, hadn't signed cards since he was like a rookie. So bringing those guys back into the mix, I think is, unique. And whether it's got the RC badge on it or the fact that it's, hasn't had a card. I think I was just looking at something someone sent to me, and I think like the last time Phil Mickelson had a card was like 13 years ago. That's crazy.
It's insane. And I'm so happy that golf cards are going to get some consistency, some new life breathed into them from Panini. This is great. I know our audience is excited. One more question from the Golf Cards and Memorabilia Facebook group. Because there have been other manufacturers producing golf cards, and I believe this will be Panini's kind of first foray into it, does Panini have any plans for marketing to current golf card collectors that may not be as familiar with Panini, even though Panini, of course, is a major brand worldwide for sports cards and other trading cards? This Golf Card Collectors Memorabilia Facebook group feels like maybe they don't have as much familiarity with Panini. Is there any plans for this particular set to market to golf card collectors specifically?
Absolutely. I think to golf card collectors, quite honestly, and to golf enthusiasts. I mean, we've got, again, the dynamic that lives on the ironically the dynamic in the LIV Golf Tour, and how they go about presenting their tournaments is unique and has an element of being very dynamic and high energy. I know that we will, in addition to just from the gate, like, launching, mainstream with them. They were in Vegas during Super Bowl week with us. We brought John Rahm to our Super Bowl, Prism House, and had him do the Eli Manning podcast, and so that launched, to coincide with the LIV Golf announcement. I guess I forget when that was now, last week or the week before, at this point, 2 weeks ago now. But, that, elevating it in that realm too, I think, from a mainstream point of view, and then also digging into, those people that are watching golf. So, there'll be a dynamic where, we'll do, box breaks with golfers at the tournament on site, at venue. In some cases, we're not going to fly to, we didn't make it to Hong Kong this year. But they've got, I think, 7 or 8 tournaments that are stateside. So we'll plan on activating in that space and doing some unique things there.
Jason Howarth, SVP Marketing and Athlete Relations at Panini.
Awesome conversation there between Paul and Jason. And it'll be nice to see some consistency from Panini, assuming this goes on more than just 2 years. He says multi-year deals. So I have a feeling as long as the LIV Golf is around, Panini will have their license. I know a lot of you guys are excited about Anthony Kim's return to competitive golf. So it's really excited to hear that he will be in the cards, literally. And I might be showing how little I've actually been tuning in to the LIV Golf broadcasting, but I didn't actually know about that whole wild card process. So it's neat to see that not only will there be these existing teams, but they can cycle some random new players into the league through this wildcard system. My only disappointment about the conversation is that Jason didn't offer to come and engage with the golf card community through the Golf Cards and Memorabilia Facebook group, or talking about ways of specifically marketing towards existing golf cards collectors. It almost seems like he just assumes that we're going to eat the product up, which is probably the case. So I guess as a senior vice president, I understand he's wanting to grow the sector and not just focus on the existing customer base. It just would have been nice if he focused a little bit more, not just on golf enthusiasts, people that might be tuning in and watching the athletes on TV, but people who just specifically like this niche. Although it will be pretty cool to be able to tune in and watch, your favorite LIV golfer literally opening up packs. That'll be pretty cool. And if they have any other behind the scenes footage to show relating to those pro golfers and cards. And I did know that Ian Poulter and Bubba Watson are hobby participants, hobby enthusiasts, card collectors, just like the rest of us. And I've talked a little bit about it on past episodes, but I hope that was some exciting news for those of you who might not have been aware. Give both of them a follow, because from time to time they actually post their own cards on their Instagram pages just like the rest of us. Or they'll share them to their stories. So not that those guys need more spotlights as professional athletes and icons of the game. But yeah, give them a follow. And if anybody here knows Ian Poulter or Bubba Watson and you want to hook a brother up, I would love to chat hobby with those guys. Let's get into card of the week spotlight. This week it is the 2012 Goodwin Champions Tiger Woods patch card. And this is a really cool card because the photo is from the Ryder Cup and the memorabilia patch appears to be a piece of the sweater that he wore in the picture. Now, I tried photo matching this with the different pictures I found on Google Images, and I couldn't match it to the exact pattern of his sweater, but it's the same style, so it must be maybe for some hidden part of the sweater or perhaps part of the wardrobe that the team wore that week. I definitely think it's from that team, but I already sold this card. I bought this one as well as a 2011 Goodwin Champions with a yellow patch on it, very similar. And I love the cards very much. I got my utility value out of them. I think I've owned them for 3 years. And I decided it's time to part ways. And so I posted the red one on eBay. It sold pretty quickly. And I still have the yellow one up for sale. So if any of you are interested, send me a DM on Instagram at The Golf Card Collector. You know, it's been a while since I've done a full-on Collector's Corner segment, so let's give you a little more today. I've got a couple of frustrating situations that I'm dealing with. I bought a Clayton Keller green precious metal gems from eBay, which is obviously a very rare card. It says serial numbered out of 100, but the first 10 serial numbers are green. So there's only 10 of these in existence. And the seller accidentally switched it up with another package. And so my card ended up with a different buyer. And I got that guy's card. And of course, that guy bought some $10 Winnipeg Jets hockey player that I don't even know. So my first reaction is, it sucks. Maybe this seller will be able to figure out a way to get us to exchange them, or what's he going to do? Maybe he's going to refund us our money. I don't know. But my first reaction is, okay, approach this with some empathy. The guy's probably frustrated that he made this mistake. And the best course of action is to stay calm so that he will want to try and help us out. And he was really apologetic, and sure enough, it was going pretty well until the other dude stops responding. The seller was handling it well. A couple days went by and he said that the other guy just stopped answering his messages. And I started to get a little paranoid. And I think, obviously, is the other guy just trying to keep my card? And there's actually several other cards in there. So obviously they're worth more money than the package I received. And I'm thinking maybe this guy's just trying to take advantage of the situation and say, well, the seller shipped me the wrong card and it's his mistake. And I've heard of people doing that. I've heard of people hanging somebody by their mistake. And it's just not fair because, yeah, I guess the seller made a mistake and it's, at the end of the day, he should bear the cost. But it's not the seller that suffers, really. It's me. It's the collector who missed out on an extremely rare card that I wanted for my Clayton Keller and Arizona Coyotes collection. But then the paranoia really started to creep in. And I thought, is this all just a ploy by the seller? Did he make this up? Did I won this card on auction and maybe it just didn't sell for enough money that the seller decided, I'm going to do the old bait and switch, the old shake and bake. Maybe I'll send this guy the wrong card, pretend like it was a mistake, pretend like the other buyer isn't willing to switch the cards, and then just send him a refund. And that's not the mindset that I want. I don't want to be the guy who assumes the worst of others. I, as a young adult, 10, 15 years ago, used to think the word cynical just meant overly analytical and critical and just hyper vigilant with your thinking. And since I've aged, I'm not going to call myself wise, but as I've learned more about the way the mind works and relationships and how important people are, I've realized that you can't be optimistic and a cynic at the same time. And if you are not optimistic, then what's worth living? What's worth being excited about for the future? And so I, in recent years, have made a very mindful effort to no longer identify as a cynic, as a cynical way of thinking, being productive and useful, but rather trying to see the best in people and the best in a situation, and even having some faith in the situation. All right, before I open the door into religion and faith and everything, let's get back to the card story. I sent the seller another message, just explaining, hey, if I understand shit happens, and if this is how it's going to go down, then it is what it is. But I was really looking forward to getting this card. I'm an Arizona Coyotes collector. Clayton Keller's my guy. And I would just be sad to see this card disappear into the void of some guy who's not going to appreciate it. The seller was polite and said, I'm following up with the other guy, and I'll get back to you. And sure enough, I got an exciting message. He said, the other guy's talking again. He wants a coined picture of the card that you received. And so I sent it. Then he says, would you be able to ship the card to the other guy and send me a picture of the package and the tracking number and your receipt so I can reimburse you? And I did all that. I shipped off the guy's card, and I'm just hoping for the best, because whoever this guy is who's got my card, actually cards, multiple, he hasn't sent me a coin picture. He hasn't sent tracking information. So for all I know, he's just going to receive this card and not ship me mine. Or maybe my cynical hypothesis that the seller is pulling a fast one on me is true. But at the end of the day, I have to push all those thoughts out of my head. Just have faith in the universe that sometime in the next week or two, my Clayton Keller green PMG will show up in the mail. I hope everybody out there has got your fingers crossed for me. All right, here's another one. Now, I mentioned before I sold my 1927 Bobby Jones. It's actually his second year card. I think I said 1926 in the last episode, but it's actually 27, so it's not his rookie card, but it's still a rare tobacco card from 100 years ago. And as I said before, I shipped it to a U.S. buyer, and it got seized by customs because it had the word tobacco or cigarettes on it or something like that, because it was a tobacco card. And I had just entered the description of the sale right onto the customs form. So next time, I guess I'll just call it a trading card. Anyways, the way eBay's custom forms work, I guess you have to know to change the description. So the card was seized by customs a month and a half ago. Since then, I have refunded the buyer. I've been told by the Postal Service that it is marked as returned to sender. An American postal worker told me he has no idea if it's going to come back. He said he's often heard of these things just vanishing, being confiscated, disappearing. So he said maybe a 50-50 shot that it'll return to me. And that's hoping that when it comes back to Canada, that they don't seize it and mark it as a controlled substance. However, it did get scanned in Toronto, Canada, on March 12th, so a couple weeks ago. So I know it has shown up in Canada, and then since then, a week ago, on March 22nd, it was scanned again and just had the word processed or something like that. But it also used the word processed when it arrived in Toronto, so I don't know if processed means they destroyed it and put it in this incinerator, or if they've processed it, opened it up and said, oh, this isn't a cigarette, this is just a trading card in a slab of plastic, but return it to sender. And hopefully that's the case. Again, everybody out there, you've already got your fingers crossed for my green Clayton Keller precious metal gems. Cross all your toes for my Bobby Jones. I want to hear from you. What precarious situations have you experienced in the hobby? Hit me up for a chance to share your story on the podcast, or if you just want to share a laugh with me or a shoulder to cry on in your DMs, I'm here. You can find me at The Golf Card Collector on Instagram, Mike Lakusta on Facebook, or better yet, just go to the Golf Cards and Memorabilia Facebook group. And if you like what you're hearing, send me a DM or wherever else we're connected, because I put this stuff out there. I don't always know how it's being received. I do hear from some listeners, but specifically, I want to hear your feedback, critiques, suggestions, anything to make the show better for you. Like I said, next week we're going to be doing a big preview for the Masters. After that, it's actually Masters week, so I'm really excited for that. That's going to be when all of these fun pools and contests are going to be starting. More details to come next week. And with that, thank you so much for tuning in. And we are going to be finishing off the episode the way we started with a quick clip from our friend Paul Hickey. Now, Paul actually has a Scotty Scheffler golf card, the only card of Scotty's, which is Sports Illustrated for Kids trading card.
Golf card collector, question right back at you. Should I list my SI for Kids PSA 7 of his now that he's won the Players back-to-back, or should I wait for the Masters week? Everybody, thanks so much for watching and listening to the Sports Card Strategy Show. I'm Paul Hickey with NoOffSeason.com. Have a great day, fondling cardboard. Ridiculous golf card collector.